Hello, we are live, and I am with Scott from
Hi.
Grey 17 podcast. We're going to be talking about a little bit of Babylon 5, but say hello to the lovely people. Scott, while you're there.
Hello, lovely people. Thanks for having me, Jay. I appreciate it. I'm happy to nerd out.
Any opportunity we get. Anybody that was supposed to be on last week, I know we had some technical difficulties. We were supposed to do that this week, but the gods have smiled on us because JMS has been tweeting in the evening.
Yes.
And then so we've got something else to talk about. But I'm just going to do the very quick intro and then we'll crack on. So, before we get into talking about the reimagining of Babylon 5 that we've been so looking forward to, the JMS has tweeted overnight or last night or whenever it was. I woke up to it anyway. On my channel, SciTrek, about October time, I did put a video out saying I was getting told that actually Babylon 5 was probably dead. This was running up into a lot of the reworking that was going on at HBO and at everywhere, and everything was just all in a mess, was it, for a couple of months. But then about 6 weeks ago, I started hearing, actually, no, it's not dead. They just put it on the back burner for a bit. And actually, now everything's sort of settled, they're having another look. And it's still very possible, likely. So that was about 6 weeks ago I heard that. So last night, Mr. JMS, J. Michael Skinski, who is amazing with Twitter, he's so giving in with everything on Twitter. He's basically said, look, it's not dead yet. I've had no phone call. No news is good news. Don't panic. How do you feel reading that? Because I mean, so long has gone on since he first said we're getting it.
Yeah.
Everyone was starting to think, oh, maybe not.
He referred to it as Schrodinger's cat. It's alive and dead at the same time in the box. Just no one's opened the box yet. You know, exactly. I have been someone who has been more positive than most, because I think that there's a lot of things that are aligning right now to make this happen. Now, I was much more positive when Mark Pedowitz was in charge of CW, because as I'm sure you and most of the folks watching know, Pedowitz was a Babylon 5 geek. Back in the 90s when he worked for Warner Brothers, JMS would slip him VHS tapes of the series before it aired because Pedowitz didn't want to wait until it showed up on TV. So, but still to this, a lot of folks have been saying, well, CW is making no pilots this year. No one has actually said that. Hollywood Reporter came out and said that they haven't bought any pilots yet. And yes, they're probably not going to buy many, if at all, many or at all, because they are now moving towards, more of a focus on non-scripted television. But it doesn't mean they're not going to buy any pilots. So much as JMS said last night, until he tells me it's dead, it ain't dead. Until he tells me it's alive, it ain't alive. So we're just waiting and seeing.
That's like non-scripted television and golf. They're going to be doing golf on the CW as well.
Yeah, Saudi Arabian golf. It's going to be exciting.
Exciting, very exciting. To me, I kind of completely understand the delay, if I'm honest, because not only is Warner Brothers going through a massive restructure, which will have slowed this down. At the end of the day, it belongs to Warner Brothers. They're going to be producing it. CW have got first dibs on it. We'll talk about that in a sec. But at the end of the day, the CW have also gone through a massive restructure. They've been sold to Nexstar, who have now moved in. There was a lot of umming and ahhing about how that deal was going to be put together, and then actually once it was decided, it seemed to go through really quite quickly. But again, both of the companies involved have had other things on their mind, I think is fair to say.
Yeah.
So it didn't seem to be a surprise to me. When he said it was going to get made, I was looking at the news thinking, I'm not sure it is, Joe. I mean, he was talking about having on our screens by the end of last year, which would have been incredible.
Well, and that got delayed for a reason too. When Mark Pedowitz was still CEO, the pilot season they were going for was the 22 TV season. But because he knew Nexstar was buying it, he actually reached out to JMS, and this is now public. It wasn't public at the time, and said, hey, we are not going to go with 22 because if we do, there's a good chance you don't make it because of the transition. So let's just wait until 23. So it's already been delayed once for that reason.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah, and like I say, yeah, that I haven't heard that, but that completely makes sense to me, and it does make sense why they said that, why they delayed it at that point, because, like I said, everything was up in the air, plates were spinning. It makes total sense. I have heard one or two rumors of a couple of people I speak to that actually Warner Brothers would love this. Yeah, and I'm always keeping my ears open where I can. I got a nice couple of little sources through my interest in Stargate, but then MGM sacked a couple of people, so now I've got sources all over the place. So it's quite lucky. Not lucky for me, not so lucky for them, but it worked out in the end. But one of the things was they would actually, Warner Brothers would much prefer this to go on HBO Max, and they think it would fit better on HBO Max. But the CW at the end of the day have got first dibs. So that actually Warner Brothers, even though they make it and they own it, it's not really up to them. CW have to say no, if that makes sense. And then they could maybe. But what do you think? Do you think it would? For me, I think HBO Max would just be a better fit.
Especially now. I want to see it. Okay, so I'm not one of those CW haters that are out there. I think CW has done some good shows in the past. I'm a huge fan of Superman and Lois. I think it's been a great show. So if it's on CW, I'm good. But I do agree that I think HBO Max, especially after they go through their little bit of transition they're dealing with right now, would probably be able to give it more notoriety and also probably a bigger budget. But I was talking to, I don't have as many sources as you do, but I was talking to a source of mine, and he had said, and he's connected to some of the former cast. He had said what he's hearing, that it will happen one way or the other, if it's going to be on TV or streaming, or even if not, JMS has a way of finding ways to get stuff out. So I think no matter what happens, we're going to know it was in that pilot script. And we're going to see that pilot script. I hope it's actually filmed and has a cast and it becomes a series. But regardless, I'm hopeful that I at least get to know what he had in mind for that pilot.
Yeah, I following JMS, reading his tweets and things, he is so open and so honest. I think as soon as he's basically allowed to, if he gets a call saying it's not happening, I could see that we will find that out, and we'll know as soon as he knows, which is also amazing. I think he's one of the most unique creators out there at the moment. The Terry Matalas guy that runs SciTrek at the moment, he's the only other person I know that's is so open and honest with.
I'm embargoed until Friday at 3 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. But I may or may not have seen 6 episodes of a certain TV show. And Terry Matalas is my favorite person right now.
I bet he bloody is. Just very quietly, thumb up.
I'm embargoed until Friday at 3 o'clock Pacific Standard Time.
Yeah, okay, good.
But if you if you subscribe to us, 3 o'clock Pacific Standard Time on Friday, you'll know.
Excellent. So, and like I say, the link for your channel is in the description. So everybody, please go over and subscribe to Grey now. If Picard season 3 is rubbish, I am going to never watch Star Trek again.
You're going to watch Star Trek again.
Good, because I really, really want to, and they really deserve it. And the last 2 seasons both made me want to hurt myself. So, not like kill myself, just like, kick myself in the shin or something. But still,
we're sci-fi fans. That's what we do.
Yeah, I wanted to injure injure somebody else. But anyway.
Since we were talking about HBO Max, I'm watching the live chat right now, and Trekgate said, I'm so baffled that HBO threw Babylon 5 of HBO Max. They didn't. And JMS came out and said this as well, too. It's all about licensing with these folks. And you have different... Warner Brothers is a very big entity. Warner Brothers TV and HBO Max are not the same department at Warner Brothers. So HBO Max bought the license to Babylon 5 for 2 years. And after 2 years, that license went away. So then Warner Brothers TV resells it. And they decided they get a better deal selling to Tubi and Roku TV in the United States. I don't know about our non-United States folks, but so HBO Max.
We don't have HBO Max here. So here we've got it on. Oh crap! I did look.
Is it Freevee? Is that right?
I think it's on Freevee. Yeah, which is an Amazon add-on here.
Yeah, so it's all about licensing. They like to make their money.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the way I understand it. Because I've had to, again, I've been trying to get my head around how these big businesses work again with the Stargate interest in MGM and things. It's not even that they're like separate departments. It's that in some ways they're still separate companies.
Absolutely.
The way it was explained to me was it's like the United States of America, how you've got 50 states. Now, in some ways, they're individual countries on their own. But then you've got this federal umbrella. So it's a country, but with lots of little country and little difference. And that's the way kind of this works where these big companies merge. It's still kind of a company. But obviously you've got the federal government, so the Warner Brothers are the federal government in this analogy.
And then you got DC, Puerto Rico, and the other territories. That just makes it even weirder. So yes.
Yeah. I did a video talking about that, and obviously JMS hadn't spoken at that point because we were all confused by it. We were like, well, why can't they just keep it? And they could have kept it on if they'd wanted to, without very little money, but they would have made less money from. We didn't know about the Roku deal at that point either.
Exactly.
But I mean, I must have made the point that the timing of the 2 years was great because they put it on just before JMS basically announced that it was going to happen. So they got loads of views. And then it was just a bit worrying that we're like, oh shit, we still haven't heard. And it's just come off. They could have put it back on if they'd wanted to. But I argued that doesn't really mean anything. It could have gone either way. They could just be trying to get either more views elsewhere or trying to sell DVDs or trying to sell it on Amazon. Or, there's lots of reasons they could have done it if they, or they just haven't decided yet. And the 2 years is up and they just.
Yeah.
I think we all think there's somebody there with a mustache, rubbing their mustache, going, I have plans. And actually, I'm not sure they do.
Yeah, let's be honest. I mean, I love Babylon 5. A lot of people do, but it's not a high priority for Warner Brothers, regardless. If they go forward with it or not, it's never going to be a top tier program. So a lot of times it's just not even a factor. They don't think strategically like that. They're thinking, okay, we have $3 billion in debt that Warner Brothers Discovery has right now that we need to write off. Roku and Tubi and Freevee and all those want to pay us money for our content. We'll sell our content.
Yes, please. Yeah. Honestly, they're at the point of selling content or selling real estate. They need to make, and don't get me wrong, they're not in as big a trouble as Paramount or a couple of other streaming services at the moment, but they have massive debt. They have debt they need to sort out. But they're working towards merging all these things together, cutting costs, that it's all going to be working that way. But for me, Babylon 5 and JMS as well, he's amazing at bringing things in at a budget. He's amazing at getting every dollar's on the screen, and I think he will again. But again, something I was told not long ago is, though, that Babylon 5 is one of those cult TV shows. And the reason why Warner Brothers would actually quite like on HBO Max if they can is because it's one of those shows that people will actually follow. So even though it hasn't got a massive, like fan base, it's not like Star Trek is like, known all over the world. People know Babylon 5, but they don't maybe. But there's a cult following of us geeks that adore Babylon 5. We know that it was, basically copied by Deep Space Nine and what have you. That will go and get HBO Max just because Babylon 5 is on there. And Warner Brothers are very aware of that. And they love that type of show that, people rewatch. And Babylon 5 is one of those shows that people rewatch over and over and again. And again, it's for them, it's gold. It's absolutely gold. But yeah, it's so yeah, the Warner Brothers Discovery merger halted B5 also. I don't think it helped, but I agree with you. I don't think it was actually a factor. But it hasn't helped.
Yeah, I'm in the chat.
Yeah,
I'm multitasking.
Everybody involved was distracted. I think that's a fair way of putting it.
Yeah,
everybody involved was distracted for 12 months, and that distraction is calming down.
Absolutely. I mean, but you mentioned timing on when HBO Max took this up and everything too. That's why we at Gray 17 started with my main co-host and I, Blake, have been talking about doing this show for forever. But when it became free to watch with a subscription to most people around the country, we saw a big influx of people interested in the show. And we're seeing that. So the community is growing right now. There is, a lot of different communities out there on social media and everything else, and is really enjoying talking about this show again. I mean, we blew up Twitter last year. No offense to my friends across the pond, but we were the top trending piece on Twitter the day of the Queen's funeral. I mean, that's huge. So I think the community is growing. And again, you're right. It's not a Star Trek community. It's never going to be that big. But it's enough people to where I think if HBO Max, Warner Brothers, whatever, CW says, hey, there are people who are interested in this who are not subscribers right now, or are not paying for our content right now, not viewing our advertisers right now. If we put this show on the air, those people come our way. And so I think that is absolutely a factor that they're looking at. And that's another reason why I still think CW is a potential, because one of the problems with CW currently is it was skewed very to a youth audience. And they've actually said that was a problem. And that's one of the reasons why CW is losing money. Part of the fix to that is they're going to get away from scripted television. Okay. Doesn't help us. But the other part is getting people who are quote unquote middle-aged to actually watch their network would be something that would be a benefit to them. And I think a sci-fi opera would do that. So,
and the thing is, for the CW, even Babylon 5, which compared to Star Trek, again, which costs $8-9 million an episode, up to 11-12 for some, about 9 average. Babylon 5 won't cost that. But compared to a reality TV show that costs maybe a few $100,000 an episode to create, Babylon 5 is still an expensive proposition for something that they won't get the same repeat views that you get on a streaming service. I honestly think either way, this show will appear on both. It's just whether it goes on the CW first. I actually suggested, and people hated this idea, but I
wasn't a big fan either, but I heard it.
You know what I'm saying? But I would say put down like an edited, because obviously on the CW, it's going to be 45-minute episodes. HBO Max, you can have an hour. So do a HBO Max version, but put a slimmed down version on CW. So put it on CW first and then put it on HBO Max. I'd watch it on HBO Max. It's like having a HD version on HBO Max, but they can have a director's cut version on HBO Max kind of thing. That's the way I thought about it. And don't get me wrong, it was just off the top of my head. I'd rather it just on HBO Max, but I actually think it'll end up on both.
Yeah, they've done it before. I mean, I mentioned Superman and Lois. Superman and Lois was on CW and HBO Max, at least in the US. That's how they did it. So they've done it before.
Yeah, I think the Ark's just done it as well. It was on Sci-Fi, then it was on Peacock the next day, and that's how they do it. And I thought that was an idea. But anyway, let's talk about the reimagining. Let's actually talk about what we would like to happen. So I can't think of another show that this has ever happened before, where the original creators come back and he's getting a chance to completely reimagine his own project. I know we got the we got Battlestar Galactica reboot, which is probably we'll talk about what's worked in the past. And I think Battlestar Galactica is probably the best example, because that's the one example that really actually worked. There's been a couple of others, but that's the one that really worked.
Became a cultural icon. Yeah.
That people actually preferred the reboot to the original, which that never happens. But that was obviously a completely different creator, the original creator. You know, I know it's still Glenn A. Larson was still executive producer until he passed, but I think he passed. Trying to remember my Battlestar Galactica.
I think you're right. I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think you're right. But part of that too is just rights as well.
I said Walter Koenig died on a live once.
No, Walter's still with us. Do not do that to me. I need Walter in my life.
We talked about how he was dead, and then somebody put up a thing and he goes, "No, he's not." Like, he's definitely dead. We're googling it on live on shows, going, "Walter's not dead." I don't know where I got it from, but anyway, sometimes you say things live that you really wish you didn't. But what do you think is like the core this? Basically, when I'm going this, I think Battlestar Galactica worked because Ronald D. Moore took certain core elements of Battlestar, and then he reworked it, modernized it a little bit, and went the other way. And I think the best example of that is using the Viper. So he teased us, "Oh, this is the Viper, and then this is the shit old Viper that we're not going to use, and then actually that's the one we have to use." And everybody went, "Yay!" Babylon 5 is going to have to do something similar, I think, if it's going to work. What do you think are the core things that he has to put in there? I mean, we'll start off with the Babylon 5 station. That's it's got to be a Babylon 5 station, hasn't it? And it's
well,
got
yeah,
to be.
he's flat out said that the whole reason why this isn't even going to happen, if it happens, is the name Babylon 5. A lot of fans have said, "Hey, JMS, why don't you do a new sci-fi show?" And he's flat out said, "No one wants to buy that. They want to buy Babylon 5, and you can't have Babylon 5 without Babylon 5 in the show. So it will have a station."
Babylon 4 prequel has been the big thing, isn't it? Why do you do Babylon 4? We want to see that. I mean, I saw him a couple of days ago say, because nobody wants it.
Yeah, no, everyone wants Babylon 5 because that's what people know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. But you mentioned Battlestar Galactica. I think that one scene in the original miniseries that came out on Sci-Fi Channel, and I grew up watching BSG, the original, and I watched Battlestar Galactica in 1980. So I watched the miniseries when it came out. I was in college, and that scene on Galactica where they're in the museum and you see the old Viper and they start playing the old music. That's the kind of stuff. It's like, hey, fans, we get it. We understand. Which, by the way, Terry Metalis, I can't say anything until Friday. So for me, I think you have to have the station. I think the themes are what's most important about Babylon 5. And what I latched onto it when I was a kid watching it in 1993 is you have a theme of species and cultures coming of age and learning about themselves and about how to interact with others. And you have the theme of breaking cycles. And there may be some newbies watching. One of the Grey 17's thing is we're trying to get new people to watch Babylon 5. So I won't go into too much details, but the idea is breaking of cycles and making things better than what they were. And it's a dark show, but it's also very hopeful. So I think that's what the reboot needs to have as well too, or reimagining.
Yeah. And I think it's got to have those cores, isn't it? I think on a very surface level, if we don't see a Star Fury, I'll be gutted. If we don't see anything, do you think they need? Will he bring back the same characters? Do you think? Obviously, different actors, but will he bring back? Will we see a Sheridan? Will we see a Delenn? Will we see Jakar? Or will he? Because I mean, in a way, I'd be a bit sad if they brought somebody like Jakar back, particularly because the actor was so loved and passed away so young, really, in lots of ways. Or Garibaldi. I think it would almost be a shame, really. But
Garibaldi, Franklin, we've lost so many. But I think he's alluded to that already and saying that he will. For one, the one press release we got said that Sheridan is captain, which was played by Bruce Boxleitner. But he even said that press release doesn't tell you the whole story. So, because obviously, if you watch the show, the first season, Jeffrey Sinclair, played by Michael O'Hare, was the captain. So people were saying, well, Sinclair's not in it then because you're starting with Sheridan. And he came out and said that may not be the case. And a lot of people have said what you said. Andreas Katsoulis played Jakar better than anyone ever could. Mira Furlan played Delenn better than anyone could. And he said, no, they were actors playing a character. Other actors can play the character as well. They'll play them differently. They won't play them the same, but other actors can play those characters. I think that was him telling us that you're going to see some of these characters again. But also I will say that he is very tied to these actors as well too. He tweeted out a few months ago when somebody was asking what would have happened on Babylon 5 if Michael O'Hare, Jeffrey Sinclair, had stayed with the show all 5 seasons. And he responded, and it was very telling, and I will never ask him about this again for that reason, is it's like asking a parent, what would the color of the baby's room be if the baby hadn't passed away? So he's very tied to these actors as well, too. So I could see it going. I think some of the characters are going to be the same. For one, again, going back to what we said earlier, the studios want Babylon 5.
Yeah.
So they want John Sheridan. They want Delenn. They want Jakar and Londo. But I also think that he's going to make sure that when he casts people for this, they're going to be people who make it their own as well, too. So they're not trying to just do what Mira did or do what Richard Biggs did, that they're doing their own thing.
It always sort of frustrates me a little bit when you hear people say, I hear this with the argument with rebooting Firefly, which I hope they never do. But that was lightning in a bottle. You can never get actors like that again. And I always think that, well, of course you can, because in every, I almost went a bit Buffy then. In every generation, there is but but there are great character actors out there. All you need is somebody that knows what he's looking for, and somebody like JMS who picks the right actors and gets the right people. And okay, we might always go, oh, it's we always preferred him before, but just to say that no one else can ever play that part is, I don't agree. I think we have so many great actors in this country, in that can do this. It's well, saying this so that some things are going to be the same. He is saying this is going to be a reimagining. So some things are going to be different. It's fair to say. Would you still have a Shadow War if you were in JMS's head right now writing this? Or would you go a different way?
One, I wish I was in JMS's head, because I would have a lot more imagination than I truly do. That being said, I think, again, going back to the themes of the story, I think you do. Because the predominant theme of Babylon 5 is, again, breaking that cycle. And we just my team just watched The Coming of Shadows, which is one of the best episodes of the show out of season 2. And the whole point of that episode is everyone is locked into what they're doing. You have the Emperor of the Centauri Emperor saying, for 30 years, I just did what an emperor does. Jakar says, no matter what, I will die today or go to prison because I'm going to kill the emperor. Londo says, I have to do this, and so forth and so on. And at the end of the show, we realize that's not the case. We are not locked in. We get to make our own choices. The main questions of Babylon 5 originally are, what do you want? And who are you? Who are you? But then we find out the real question is, where are you going? That's the question that matters. We don't learn that until later in the show. But where are you going is the real question. What is your journey? And you need the Shadows for that. You need the Vorlons for that. Maybe he'll call them something different. Nicole on my show calls them the Spider Murder Ships, whatever. But you need you need those quote unquote first ones in the galaxy that define everyone's role, so you can break those roles. And for me, that's what Babylon 5 is. So again, I have nowhere near the imagination that JMS does. So if he comes and says there's no shadows, cool, man. I want to watch it. I'll watch it. But I think you kind of have to.
Yeah, I think as well. This is what I mean by the certain things are core, certain things are iconic. The shadows are still. I actually think it would be really difficult for him to not bring it back and not to have the ships in a similar way, because they kind of are. If you think about Babylon 5, you think about the shadows, you think about, some of the ships, some of the stuff they keep the same, some of the stuff they'll change. In a way, I was kind of hoping he would go before Babylon 5. I did a video not long ago, and it says the best actual, most realistic fighters in sci-fi, and
Star Fury, 100%.
Yeah, Star Fury.
They actually follow physics, unlike any other ship you've ever seen. Maybe the new Vipers in BSG, but still.
Yeah, some of the stuff in the Expanse, but
that's true.
You can follow it. But that is just such a great vessel. They got to bring these things back, but I was just thinking, if you don't have the shadow conflict, you've got to have something else instead. And you've still got things like breaking up the politics back home on Earth and Earth Force. I was thinking the shame really is he couldn't do, and you're going to have to forgive me, I can't remember the name of the damn film, and I did said this on a video and I got it wrong, but where we saw Sheridan and actually fighting the war at the beginning.
In the beginning,
which I was so close. I almost wish they could start there, because I want to see it from the Minbari conflict, and then maybe why they built Babylon 5, and a bit more. So I almost like him to start a bit sooner. I know he's not going to, but I would have liked to have seen that more, because in the beginning it always impacted me how say the Minbari come up and their weapon doors are open, and this is way of showing you what we have. That was such a clever way of setting that conflict up, that I'd love to see almost what he would do with that now, and I don't think we're going to see it. but I think it's gonna be a shame in a way.
Well, and I think he's going to take it in a different approach too. One of the, and I saw somebody on the chat say too that audiences these days don't have the attention span that we had in the 90s to handle a novel on television, which is what Babylon 5 was. And so as a novel on television, he was able to do that in having you ask questions and then answering those questions as you went. So for example, the Battle of the Line, which is seen and in the beginning as well, which is Jeffrey Sinclair in A Star Fury. We didn't see the Battle of the Line fully until season 4, or actually season 4, because we saw Sinclair's perspective, but then in season 4 we see Delenn's perspective, and all intertwines in the beginning the movie. So what I'm getting at here is he's going to take a different approach in storytelling. He's already said that. He said that people need to stop thinking of it like it was the 90s show. Stop thinking of it as 22 episodes a season. Stop thinking about it as a 5-year arc. For one, he knows, because he experienced it last time, no one's going to guarantee you 5 years.
No.
They're going to guarantee you a pilot once they buy the pilot, and then maybe if you're lucky, a first season, and then you go from there. But he's also said on Twitter that he wants to try something new, something that hasn't been done before. He hasn't said what that is. I have ideas, but again, I don't have his imagination, so I'm probably wrong. But so I think we need to look at this as something different. It's going to probably have the same tropes. It's going to have a Star Fury. It's going to have a John Sheridan, but it's going to be different, and it's going to be a different experience. So people who are coming to it brand new, who never watched the old show, they're going to have a new experience and learn about these characters, learn about these stories. And us who grew up with it or came into it in the 2000s or whatever, we're going to have a new experience too, because we're going to learn about this universe in a different way. So I agree with you. I want to learn more about the backstory. I want to know about B4, and I want to know about the Minbari and the Centauri and what happened in the Great Shadow War 1,000 years ago. But I also want a good story. And so if I get a good story, I'm good, because at the end of the day, I can go back and watch my remastered 5 seasons of B5, even the ones with Byron. But now I have a new story to watch too. It's the same reason why I'll still turn on the old Battlestar Galactica, but I also have BSG, and maybe I'll have another Battlestar Galactica down the road. I mean, I can watch all of those.
Exactly. It doesn't take anything away. It just drives me crazy sometimes when people get so panicked that something's going to get rebooted. He goes, it'll ruin the original. No, it won't. It'll still be there. Don't worry. But yeah. I do think we have to get away from this idea that, like you said then, that this is going to be the 90s show, just revamped or looking differently or whatever. Because he says more than once, hasn't he, that, this is like, if I was going to have this idea now, with all the experience I've got as a maker now, as a writer, as a creator, what would I do? And it's a blank slate. So he's got this core idea, which I think is like, you've said it beautifully there, that it's about breaking those cycles and breaking those institutions or something in a way. It's just like the status quo isn't necessarily the right way to go. And I felt like it was like children and parents and trying to break away from your parents or something. I remember, because when I watched this the first time round, I was a young teenager. I was about 16, 17. And that whole thing about get out of my galaxy at the end of, the Shallow conflict, that sort of hit me, because I felt like I was, that was me trying to break out into the world, sort of thing. So if you've got that core thought, you don't need anything else. He can go anywhere with it, and that's got to be exciting for a creator to be able to do, to give them that opportunity. But I honestly think we could sit here and guess or say what we would like all fucking day, but because he can actually do anything. Like you said, that he might not even go the war route. He could go some other way. It'll be a massive shame, because the battle sequences were fantastic. I mean, you watch them now and it's like the special effects, like,
only one American, only one human has ever stood before us and won, and he's behind me, and you're in front of me.
Yeah, we've got to.
I misquoted that completely, but you get my idea. I want to see Dylan on a battle cruiser.
Yeah. Oh man, I'd love it if we could things like that. But that's another reason why, though, I'd love him to get this on HBO Max, because I do think streaming services, people are only just suddenly starting to realize what you can do in a streaming service. And one of the things is you don't have to sit to the old rules. It doesn't have to be 22 episodes. It doesn't have to be aired every week. You don't have to even air them every year. I mean, look what they're doing on Netflix with a couple of their big shows at the moment. The show explodes, the actors get busy, so they just have a 2-year gap, and they're not bothered. It'll be back when it's back, don't worry. But also, I remember watching something about Battlestar Galactica, the reboot they were planning with Tim Ismail, and he said, well, one of the things we want to do is we're going to drop 3 episodes on one day, because there's a battle sequence, and it's a 3-way battle sequence, so we're going to see each of the perspectives. We can do that on a streaming service. We can't do that on anywhere else. So in a way, I think somebody creative like JMS, and he's saying, like, you know, I want to do something new. I'm like, put him on a streaming service, give him a bit of a budget, put him on a streaming service, and let him do whatever he wants, and let's just see what he thinks of.
Agree, because you know my first interaction with JMS a lot. I mean, he also did Masters of the Universe, She-Ra, and Real Ghostbusters, all 3 of them in my pantheon of 80s geekdom. Oh, God. But my first real interaction with JMS that I knew of was Captain Power and the Soldiers of the Future. And hear me out. So Captain Power, they sold toys that were the Captain Power jets, and you actually shot at your TV, and there were little reticles on your TV, and if you hit them, you scored points, and if you didn't hit them, they ejected your Captain Power out of your toy. So you interacted with the show. What I'm getting at here is JMS has always been about trying new things. So I would love to see him get a chance to do something different and find new ways to explore the medium and push the boundaries, which is what he's always done. That's why we had serialized Babylon 5 in the 1990s when sci-fi shows weren't serialized. DS9 would become serialized, but not yet. Even when
you copied Babylon 5 in a lot of ways.
Well, that's a debate for another day, and I'm happy to have that debate.
And don't get me wrong, I don't think they copied. They didn't tell the story, but I think they saw Babylon 5 and we're maybe inspired, because you know there are a lot of similarities between the shows. You know, they're both
to the very same way that JMS was inspired by Bester, with the telepaths, not the Bester character, but Bester the author, and so forth and so on. But that's a debate for another day, which I'm happy to have.
Fair enough. That's fair enough. But you know, there's like I've always thought Babylon 5 was ahead of its time, and somebody said that you can't have it now because people don't have the extent of the attention span. I don't agree. I think we're more used to it now than we were when Babylon 5 came out. I think in watching something like Game of Thrones, I was thinking that, like, say, I watched Game of Thrones a second time, and I'm there. I'm not going to go. I'm going to take a notepad with this, and I'm going to write people's fucking names down, because that person probably won't appear for 6 months now, and I'm going to have to try to remember who it is. And you know, you always like want to make notes when you're watching the damn show. And I think people are better at that now because we're more used to it. And that show, if ever you want a show that, and a lot of American television where you've got the last time on, and they do that, but they'll do that after a break on reality shows, don't they? Go, remember what happened 3 minutes ago? Yes, I remember what happened 3 minutes ago. They never did that on Game of Thrones, so I fucking wish they would, because I'm like saying, okay, right, I know this character, I vaguely remember his face, but I can't remember who he is. So I mean, a Babylon 5 though was so far ahead of its time, that had that overriding story arc that, like, say, Star Trek Next Generation didn't, DS9 did, Voyager did, and all of the streaming shows do that now. And you know, it was actually a weird thing when Strange New Worlds didn't. They did something else.
They were being retro with their episodic television,
which is just like, no, they're just doing what we want. You know, spaceship, go explore, do stuff.
Strange New Worlds is my favorite new Trek, although that may change next week.
On Friday.
Maybe. I'm sorry, I'm under embargo. I can't say
I feel like we're at the Star Trek Generations. What can you tell me? Friday.
Yeah, it won't be installed until Friday. Tuesday. I'm sorry.
But yeah, no, that's I just think it's such an exciting idea. I hope it doesn't get lost in the in all the changes that are going on at the moment. I'm hoping it does get a chance, because I say if we give him even a reasonable budget, I think he could do something really amazing. So if it does come back, is there anything that you would say, hands up right now, you'd be most excited about? Or that is there one thing from the show you just think he's got to do that?
Okay. Well, I would say most excited just in a meta aspect is I have 3 kids, and being able to sit down with my kids and watch New Babylon 5. That's what
Yeah,
I'm most excited about, because
yeah,
my kids have watched me watch the shows, and Dad, that's old 90s stuff. What are you doing? But if I could sit down
yeah.
and have them watch something new and get them to be a gateway drug into the old stuff, that's what I'd be most excited about. But to answer the other part of your question, what does he need to do? I think it needs to be a story of hope. I am so tired of
Mm,
sci-fi and mainstream quote unquote horror. Like I'm thinking Game of Thrones, and I'm thinking um, Walking Dead and shows
mm,
like that, where there literally is no hope.
mhm,
All your friends and family on these shows are going to die. It's just a matter of when. And even if they don't die, their lives are so meaningless now that there's no.
mm,
That I joked about. I didn't joke. I talked about this in one of our episodes recently, where it's not just important to survive. You have to have a reason to survive, and that's where Babylon 5 and Star Trek do a really good job usually. And that is, yes, we're going to go through some dark times. Some of us aren't going to make it. Some of us are going to make really bad decisions, looking at you, Londo. But at the end of the day, we are going to come out of this better than where we started as a
yeah,
species. I
mhm,
need that. And I think that's a given. I think that's something
yeah,
that JMS would absolutely do. But I need hope in my sci-fi.
yeah. I agree, and I even Star Trek was always the positive
Mhm.
sci-fi. It was
Mhm.
always the world is better, life is better. Even that, the new Trek stuff like Discovery. We go into the future. We're all really excited. There's the burn. Everyone's life is awful. Like, what? How did that happen? It's like, but I agree with you in B5 that's even though it's looked like we were the universe we could all lose. We came out and what we got in everything
Mhm.
was, but also I mean we did it together,
Mhm.
and that was an important message in the 90s. I think it's even more important now. I am going to use the dreaded woke word, which I detest, but when I use it, you know what I mean. Is this show going to have people angrily shouting woke at it when it gets made?
Yeah, and those people are dumb. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
a little
I'm
bit.
not going to sugarcoat it.
Mhm.
If I've had people on social media say, "Oh, B5 better not be the reboot better not be woke." I'm like, do you realize that originally in The Gathering, Dylan was meant to be a male, and that she was going to transition to a female? Now they couldn't pull
Mhm.
it off because of several reasons, dealing with Mira Furlan's voice and the makeup and everything else.
Yeah. I
But
also imagine the network went ballistic.
I don't actually. That was no, because in the original
Mm.
plan, which JMS has released, and we are going to do a show
I
about
did see it, but I
soon.
always wondered
Yeah.
if the I just imagine the executives somewhere going, "I'm not.
Well, let's
Will the
use another
censors let us do
example.
that?"
Let's use
No,
another
it's like,
example. Ivanova and Talia
mhm.
in the 90s.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, very
Uh,
difficult.
the Babylon 5 was always quote unquote woke. And if you didn't pay attention to that, I can't help you.
Yeah,
Uh, Progressive sci-fi is progressive sci-fi, and it makes us uncomfortable. That's the point of science fiction, going back all the way to the 1800s and sci-fi novels. The point was to look at our culture today and make us feel uncomfortable and make us think about what is actually happening here.
mhm,
And so it's going to be that. And if you get uncomfortable to a point where you don't, and you just can't handle it, that says more about you than the medium.
yeah,
And that's for any medium. So uh, I'm probably going to get some people, wagging their finger at me, but that's fine. Uh, at the end of the day, that's what sci-fi is.
I mean, let's go back. It's at its best.
Yes, I mean, it's the same thing too. Like Star Trek today is too woke. In the original series, you had one guy who had black on one face and white on the other, and black on one face and white on the other, and they didn't like each other. Excuse me?
I love that William Shatner came out, didn't he, recently, and said something about it being Star Trek was never political. And then there's a picture of him stood next to that and go, have you forgotten Star Trek?
I will not say anything mean about a 90-something-year-old man, but yeah.
I love him. I've met him twice. I love the fella. I've even read his books and I didn't hate them. And I have loved most things he's done. I've just finished watching Boston Legal for about the 9th time.
There you go. Good old Denny Crane. Yeah.
Denny Crane. I adore the man. But he is in his 90s, and that was a stupid thing to say. Star Trek was always, for me, the best sci-fi is brilliant because it can use metaphors to say things you can't say in other things. And also, if it makes you go, oh, and pokes you a little bit and pokes your what you think is right or wrong or whatever, and then it's doing its job. That's what it's for,
It's supposed to make you think. If you don't want to do that, there's plenty of reruns of Duck Dynasty for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think the things that maybe JMS will poke might be a little bit different today because things are different. It's like gay rights gay rights has changed into transgender and all these sorts of things. Race
gender fluidity and everything else.
So I honestly think actually that for us, as much as it's different, actually things haven't really changed a great deal. And he'll deal with it the same way. But unfortunately, before people joined, before people see this show, they will shout woke at it and they will say it's crap. And that's what frustrates me. People were shouting that Quantum Leap was going to be a load of rubbish and a load of thing. And actually, fair, it's an okay show. It's not the greatest show in the world. It's okay. It's pretty good, but it's not woke.
No,
it's just got a Chinese fella in there just to make that. That's all. It's not Chinese, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, Evan's my favorite character in that show. Just throwing it out there. But that's a whole nother thing too. Is there is a lot of sequel reboots going on right now, and I think Quantum Leap is a good example of that. Ghostbusters Afterlife, which is I love. I have all my Ghostbusters here. You can't see, but so there's other ways you can do it too. I don't think Babylon 5 is going to do that, but it's interesting.
No, I think this idea, this modern thing of doing sort of continuations, soft reboots, it's all the TNG was. It's not new, and people hated TNG when it came out. People were going nuts. This isn't Star Trek, and now it's that's a lot of people. That's their Star Trek. But I'm a big Stargate fan. This channel we talk about Stargate more than we talk about anything else. And we're just as Stargate fans, we're just desperately hoping for a continuation, and not a hard reboot. Hard reboot when you've got 17 seasons of a show is, nearly 20 years it was on screen, is hard. But Babylon 5 for me is one of those that it's almost ideal because it was only on for 5 years. We won't include Crusade and whatever. But
you don't want to include Legends of the Rangers? Come on.
I don't. You know what? I don't even think I ever saw it.
It was only on Sci-Fi Channel one time. Super Bowl weekend is when they released it. So
I'm not even sure I'll go over here, to be honest. But a lot of look, the head of Warner Brothers, Zaslav, was recently talking about what sort of shows are going to be in HBO Max, and he basically came out straight up and said it's got to have a franchise potential, and that was like, if it hasn't got a franchise potential, it's going to struggle.
Look at what he's doing with DC right now, putting James Gunn in charge of that and saying go because he knows it's got an IP.
We could talk about that in a second, but yeah, I say what I'm trying to say is that Babylon 5 is a show that has that potential. It has a lock stock fan base immediately, and actually, it's like a fresh sci-fi show in lots of ways because it's over. Is it 30 years old? When was it? 95.
Yeah, the 30th anniversary is next month. This month, February 22nd is when The Gathering aired.
Exactly. Yes, 30 years old. It's prime for a hard reboot, and it could kickstart something if JMS does it right, which I think he will. There could be a big franchise because it's a big universe. He could do anything he wants with it. Well, as you mentioned, DC and James Gunn.
I'm a Marvel guy. I'm just throwing it out there.
I'm a Marvel guy as well. The Batman's my favorite superhero, but Marvel have just done a way better job over the last 10 years. But as we've never had you on the channel before, though, and we've I think we've covered Babylon 5 nicely. We've got 5 or 10 minutes left.
Cool.
So what do you think about what he threw out last week? What James Gunn chucked out at us?
Generally, it was not as exciting as I was hoping for. I have not been a fan of the quote unquote Snyder universe much. For one, I don't think anyone has understood Superman on film since, the Reeve movies. Superman Returns kind of figured it out, but I was not a fan of Man of Steel. Don't get me wrong, Henry Cavill, I'm fine with. He's a good actor. I really want him to be Commander Shepard in Mass Effect, but that's a whole nother story. But I was not a fan of Man of Steel or any of those. I think the best one to come out of them was the original Wonder Woman. But even they kind of screwed the pooch on that one with the sequel. Mm-hmm. So I was all for. Oh God, I know. But the first one was great, and I have I have 2 daughters, and it was great to watch Wonder Woman with them and have a good movie. But I was hoping for more. I was hoping for a more distinct plan, and I was kind of meh on it. Like, okay, we're getting another Swamp Thing. Okay, that's great.
I didn't get that at all.
Yeah,
I don't know where they're going with that. But okay.
It's all going to depend on Superman, isn't it? I mean, the Brave and the Bold, the Bat Family thing. Okay, whatever. I haven't really read Batman comics since like Nightfall in the 90s. Yeah. So, but they need to be able to pull off Superman. And the whole idea of Superman is, for me and for, I think, many fans, is he is, going back to that story of hope and sci-fi, he is what we try to be. He is what we try to strive to be.
Yeah.
And so I don't need emo Superman. I don't need illegal alien Superman. I need Superman who grew up in Kansas, who is a Boy Scout, who believes in apple pie and what we could be as a. I need Captain America with a cape, is what I need. I think the best Superman movie to come out. Yeah, I think the best Superman movie to come out in the past 20 years was Captain America: The First Avenger.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic. Yeah. I honestly think with Superman, it's somebody that's got all of that power and actually doesn't want to use it, sort of thing. And that's the paradigm with Superman, is that he could be, and they tried to do this in Batman versus Superman, and actually I think they did quite a good job. Other than why did you say that name? I actually quite like Batman versus Superman, because Batman was scared of Superman because he said he could do anything. And he didn't trust, even if there's a 1% chance, sort of thing. And I always liked that idea with Superman, that he can do anything, but he doesn't. He wants to be a force of good, because most people look at that and going, if I could do anything, I so would. It's like, then I'd be evil. So yeah, I agree with that. I just look at what he's put out, and I just think any story can be done brilliantly if it's done well. Right? When they were making Ant-Man, like I said, we're both Marvel guys. When they were doing Ant-Man, I was watching that going, that ain't gonna work. That's gonna be crap. And what they knew, it was a bit stupid. So they a little bit of tongue in cheek in the right places. When they said, "Can we change the name?" I have a bit of a joke. No, we can't. But they did it right, and it worked. So I'm looking at like Brave and the Bold, and I'm thinking that's a stupid idea. And Batman and Robin, and I remember the comic. And I was actually really pleased with myself that I remembered it correctly, because I had to go and I did this live video when I read what he'd done, and I just talked about it from memory. And I actually vaguely remembered the comic that it's actually Batman's son, Robin's Batman's son in this one.
Damien, yep.
I was so proud of myself. I geeked on that. But every time we've had Robin in the movies before, it's not worked. It doesn't even work that well in the animated stuff, and the animated stuff's way better than a lot of the live action we've seen. So that makes me very nervous. And obviously they've also got potential of Batgirl, which never works, and we've got all these other things. The Superman storyline just sounds like a hard reboot again. And I was like, fuck's sake, do we really need to see an origin story of Superman again? Do we?
No, I don't think you don't have to. I think what you do is you do kind of what Marvel did with Spider-Man and say, we already know about Uncle Ben. Okay. We know that.
Yeah, we don't need to worry about it. We'll mention him.
So, I mean, going back to JMS, what I would like to see is some of what his run was with his Superman run. Some of it was a little, okay, he's grounded and he walks across America. Not so much. But there's one scene in the JMS Superman comics, and I'm blanking on which one it was, where Superman is talking to a woman who's about to jump from a building. And he basically has a conversation with her, and he says, I could stop you, but I'm not going to. I'm going to stay here, and I'm going to stay with you all night, and you make the choice. Because if I stop you, you're just going to make the same choice again when I'm not here. And it's Superman grasping with the idea that he is a god. He has the ability to do whatever he wants. If he wants to pluck that girl off the roof and bring her down, that's fine. But that's not going to help her. And he has to grasp with that. That's the kind of stories that you could do with Superman that would make sense. You don't have to blow up Metropolis. You don't have to have Zod in the first movie. You don't have to have him, the capital of the United States, blowing up. And instead of Superman trying to save people, he walks out with his head down and flies away because he got beat. That's not Superman. And so what I'm getting at here is you don't need an origin story. You need to examine the person. And I think Gunn could pull that off. I just think after that, I mean, there's not much for me to bite into yet. Of course, again, I didn't know, even though I was a comic fan, I didn't really know about the Guardians, especially the new Guardians with, you know, for the 2000s. So when they said the next movie is going to be Guardians of the Galaxy, I'm like, oh, that's a stretch. And it became our generation's Star Wars. So if anyone can pull this off, it's Gunn. I got to see it first.
Yeah. My only risk is that, like I say, James Gunn did Guardians of the Galaxy, and then he did Suicide Squad, which is genuinely one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
Really? You didn't like the Suicide Squad?
The Suicide Squad, the second one.
I thought that was one of the most fun DC movies they put out.
It was a full-blown B movie, but that was the point. They did it really straight, though. And it was
then you had Peacemaker TV show, which was good too.
But the Peacemaker TV show, I adored.
It's the same aesthetic.
It was the same. Yeah, but no, it was awful. The thing is, I'm a massive fan of Nathan Fillion. So Nathan Fillion in a movie, I was like, yeah, and I was even watching it going, this is stupid. That was the thing. I was thinking, maybe I went into it with the wrong mindset. I didn't even particularly like the first Suicide Squad.
That one was trash.
Yeah, but I genuinely didn't get it. It missed for me. And sometimes films do, then you just don't quite get it. And obviously the giant starfish comes up at the end, and I'm just like, oh, for fuck's sake. I just hate. And you know what? I don't even think I watched it all the way through. I think I might have turned it off. I hated it that much, so I don't even think I watched it to the end. But then when when Peacemaker came out, I'm like thinking, I saw a couple of adverts, and but you know what got me though? I saw a clip of the starting of the dance.
Yeah, like, the intro. That's
I say, okay, that looks like a show for me.
Yeah, but again, just watching John Cena do his little thing.
Yeah, and the
T-1000.
Yeah, it's amazing. And for me, that was one of the best shows of that year. I absolutely adored it, and I'm ashamed. It is genuinely a shame they're pushing back a second season because I would have loved it. And I don't even know if we're going to get a second season.
You're going to get Waller, which is going to basically be the second season, but. Yeah,
he suggested that, didn't he?
Yeah, I will be the first to say that I grew up a Marvel fanboy, and part of that is I think Marvel superheroes are more grounded, and I like that. I like that they're in New York. I like that they're not usually gods. So I've never been really a DC guy except for Superman because, well, I'm a kid from the 80s, so I grew up with watching Superman.
I have my Batman belt on right now.
There you go. So
taking my belt off so I can show people without standing up and show my crotch.
Just about to say, I'm like, you stripping for us already? It's only 1 o'clock my time.
7 o'clock here. It's nothing.
Okay, so it's time. Yeah, it's time to lose the belt. So I'm all, again, as we were talking about with B5, I just want a good story. So if you give me a good story, I'll be happy. Nice.
I've been wearing it for about 20 years. I'm on my 5th belt. the buckle.
I still say, and this is going to be one of those where, Bob in the chat's going to hate me more, but the best Batman film of all time is still Mask of the Phantasm.
No, that's great. I just said to you, the animated stuff was better than the...
Kevin Conroy is my Batman.
Even the Batman's, I can't remember what it was called, Batman Samurai or something that was done a couple of years ago. I really like that. They sort of did a different take on it. I've always thought the animated stuff was always better. The first Batman movie was great, though, with Michael Keaton. I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah,
back when
and that one was 89 Batman was great because it was something different. But everyone's been trying to ape 89 Batman in one shape or form since then. And again, I don't need a hunky-dory Batman. I don't need Adam West. But can we not do the whole brooding thing anymore for a while? Again, and that's why I love the animated series. Yeah, Batman was a dark character, but he wasn't like he wasn't just dark for the sense of being dark. And unfortunately, that's what we've had for the most part since then. Yeah.
It's more like almost like the Punisher we need more, isn't it? Where he's from the Marvel TV series again, that Batman was always punishing people. That was his sort of thing. He was angry. That's the point. And violent. And even Robert Pattinson's, I enjoyed the Robert Pattinson, the Batman. I enjoyed it on the whole. I liked how they did a Batmobile that was like a bit more realistic. But he was, again, too broody. He should have been more angry. And it would have been
I was not a huge fan of the new Batman until the last act. And I think it's been out long enough where I'm not going to spoil anything. He realizes at the end, this isn't working. Me just being a scary character who beats the crap out of people is just making things worse. I need to give people hope. And that's the end of the movie. And so I'm interested in the Batman 2, because hopefully they explore that. And they explore the idea that, yes, he can scare the crap out of criminals. That's what he does. But he also has to be a symbol for other people to aspire to. So I was like watching most of the Batman going, oh God, we're doing this again. We're doing this again. And at the very end, I'm like, oh, that was the point. They were trying to tell us something different. They probably could have cut about 20 minutes, but they were telling us something different.
So, I was thinking, all I would do for me was whoever edited the first one, I would throw him out of a window and get somebody else in and just make it a bit snappier.
Yes. It does not need to be 3 hours.
Not
every movie has to be epic, folks.
No, just a little snappier, a little quicker. You know, the bit when he walks in and he sort of looks around for what feels like 20 minutes, 2 seconds. Do that. He goes into a crime scene. He doesn't have to look at everything. He could just look at the dead body and then say something. He doesn't. That scene doesn't have to be 20 minutes either.
But I will say the one other thing that the Batman, I think, got right. Again, I agree with you. Editing was something that had to be worked on.
Yeah, it was just a director. He wanted a somber movie, didn't he? That's the style he wanted. And just speed up a little bit. Knock 20 minutes off would have felt like a whole different movie.
No one gets the idea that Batman's supposed to be a detective. And so the whole idea here is he's supposed to be a smart guy. They kind of hinted on that with the Batman. They haven't really done that much. I mean, okay, in Dark Knight, he looks at a bullet for a bit and figures stuff out. But really, no one's really gotten the whole he's a detective in a long time. So I'd like to see that.
It's Adam West, really.
Yeah, that's true.
The back
animated series again,
and some in the animated,
Mask of the Phantasm does it well, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah, exactly. Scott, I'm going to say thank you so much. I always try to keep these things around an hour because my throat hurts. And there's a running joke here that as well. By the time I get to a live video, generally I need to go for a wee, and that's just the way these things go. In the commentary today, I'm just going to thank very quickly. I've seen Shelley, as always, being amazing as she's been gifting people memberships to the channel. I've told her she's not allowed to do super chats anymore because she runs our Facebook group, Scott, and she's amazing and she does loads of help. So instead, she's got around my little.
I see that. She's been giving out free samples left and right. She's like a pusher.
I know, but she wants to help the channel, and I appreciate it. But thank you so much, Shani. Thank you, everybody that's got your memberships today. Now just don't cancel them. Keep them. So, and that helps. Thank you very much. But no, it was really good. And like I say, I'm sorry I couldn't speak to you guys in the comments because I can't think and talk and read. You can, Scott. I can't. But thank you so much. Yeah, I can't do that either. I just end up hitting myself in the head. Oh, don't do it with my ring hand, you idiot. Oh man, that's gonna hurt. Scott, I would 100% love to come to get you back and just geek out on something else. Maybe in a week or two when we can talk about Star Trek. That'd be interesting.
I'm happy to. I love being a nerd. I see also Mega's in the chat as well too. I need to get Mega to talk more as well. So yeah, but no, I'm happy to join whenever we get a chance to chat. I love it.
Excellent. We will.
And I get to piss off more people in your chat, so that's great.
Yeah. Oh no, we got a really nice community growing over here now. That people that they're always on, they're always got an opinion. I then have to explain to them why they're wrong and give them a correct opinion. But they love it. Everyone loves being talked down to. No, we don't do that. Everyone's opinion's valid, and no, I'm going to change that. Most people's opinions are valid. Some people's opinions gets them blocked. But that's a completely
it's
different.
Still a valid opinion. I just will block you. That's fine.
Yeah. I'm just like, I'm not now. YouTube will definitely delete my channel for that. So no, bye. Some people just, I don't know, not very often, but you get the odd one. But no, thank you so much. Hopefully we might hear something Babylon 5 related very soon. Let's fingers crossed that we do. I have a horrible feeling. Just before we go, then one last thing Babylon 5 related. How confident are you, if we had to say, give it a percentage, that we will get an announcement this year?
A positive or negative announcement? 100%.
Either way.
100%. Because at the end of the day, one of two things are going to happen. They are going to greenlight the pilot, and that will happen here in the next several weeks because they have to go to pilot, and that's going to happen in the springtime. Or they will call JMS and say it's not happening.
Yeah.
Now, so 100% we'll know with the CW this year. Now, will we know what happens with the script that he wrote? I give it about 75% because I think there's always a chance something else happens.
And how confident are you that it's going to get made?
As a TV media?
Positive result.
As a TV media, I would say, I think 75. I think it's going to happen. Now, will it get made as either TV or a comic or anything like that? 100%. I think JMS has an idea and he'll get it out there. It's just a question of how. And I've talked to some of the original cast members, and they've said the same thing. They've said no matter what, JMS is a dog with a bone. He will get it out there one way or the other.
Yeah. I've said, and it being TV, and like you said, I think the next two months, if we haven't, this is a bit similar to I keep telling people about Stargate, really. If April, we need to have known by April. It should be filming by April, really.
Yeah, it would be. But, if it's going to hit the airwaves in August, September time, it has to be.
Yeah, well, we won't necessarily. Well, no, if they go to HBO Max, that whole thing goes out the window.
Changes. Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, if it's CW, it has to be next thing. And they'd have to film the green. Yeah, they'd have to greenlight it and be filming by April, or at least we'd have to know what the schedule was by then. Mm-hmm. Or I don't think it won't happen, and we'll just hear from JMS that it's not going to happen. But like I said, I agree with you. I think he'll just get it out another way. But I'm 50-50 on whether we're going to get this on television. I just hope that the Warner Brothers can grapple it away from the CW, because I think we'll get a better product.
I will put a plug in for JMS. If you want to be the first to know, join his Patreon, because he has said over and over again, as soon as he gets the call, one way or the other, he's posting the Patreon. So I'm a patron of JMS, and I think it's well worth it.
Excellent. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'm not, but I might have to, because I just need the news ASAP. Because this is one of those shows that, like I said, we would go looking for. you know, and that we will genuinely be. There's not many shows you go, you know, something gets announced, you go, oh, that's great, that'll be interesting. This will be one of those like, pub, let's have a beer. I'm very, very happy about this, and that's one of those rare shows.
There was like 10 years ago where I think it was Verizon had a streaming service, but it was only like 15-minute clips, and for some reason they had the license to B5. So I was watching B5 in 15-minute clips. That's how sick I am. And I own the DVDs. I don't understand.
We're mental. We're mental for these shows, man. We're mental. But yeah, and let's just hope he does something amazing, but I'm sure he will. But again, thank you so much, Scott. Everybody, like I say, the link, if you don't know Grey 17, the link is in the description. Please go and find it. I'm also a subscriber, so it's on my subscriber list as well. If you can't find it there, you can go there and find it. But if you just search Grey 17, it'll come up. It's Grey 17 podcast, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
So, okay, then, Scott. We will hopefully see you again, sir.
Thank you. I would love to.
Have a lovely day. Go get yourself some lunch because it's lunchtime there. I'm going to go get my tea. And I've got to put my belt back on because it's now hanging around my phone.
Priorities, yes.
So thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Say bye-bye, Scott.
Adios. See you later.